So, I've been thinking about the Azure Flute recently. I'm sure a lot of us know the story, but for those of us who don't know, and a bit of a refresher for those who do, let's get some context. I'll make it quick. Every generation in the series has left at least one Pokemon out of the game, so they can distribute them in an event. We're looking at Generation 4 here, where they left out Darkrai, Shaymin, and Arceus. Also these goopers, but we're not talking about them right now. For these games, they decided not to distribute the Pokemon, and to instead distribute special items that opened up new areas and short side quests where you would catch the legendary Pokemon yourself. Darkrai got the member card, allowing you to enter the previously locked in Canalave City, which would then bring you to New Moon Island. Shaymin got Oak's letter, which let you meet Professor Oak outside of Victory Road and discover a new path to the Flower Paradise. And Arceus got the Azure Flute, which would automatically activate at the top of Mount Coronet when you entered Spear Pillar, and brought you up even higher to the Hall of Origin. Now then, Game Freak waited until Platinum to start distributing these. The member card was released at the end of 2008, Oak's letter was released nearly right after it in 2009, and from July to November in most regions, we got Arceus. No Azure Flute, just a level 100 Arceus dumped straight into the game. Now, here's the thing, there were data miners back then. We knew that Arceus had an event just like Shaymin and Darkrai. We had seen videos of it. But for some reason, it was entirely passed over, and we were just given Arceus directly. Despite expectations, no explanation was ever given, and it would be many years before we were given any closure, and when that day finally came, it was not what one would expect. I imagine most of you who clicked on this video know exactly where I'm going with this. That damn Masuda quote. In an interview released on September 24th, 2013, news outlet Nintendo World Report got to sit down and chat about the upcoming release of Pokémon X and Y. Shoutouts to Nintendo World Report, because they leaned as hard as they could into that angle of, we're just gonna be fans and ask you guys questions. They had questions ranging from, would you make Pokémon Snap on the Wii U? To, how do you guys pick the Smash Brothers Pokémon? In an interview about X and Y. It's thanks to this that we get the wonderfully straightforward question, how come the Azure Flute was never made available in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum? To which Masuda responds with, shockingly, an equally straightforward reply.
When we were first developing the games, we thought about including it. I thought it would be fun, but once the game was complete and released, I changed my mind down the road and didn't think it would be. I thought it would be confusing for people and kind of hard to understand how it worked, so I eventually made the decision not to distribute it.
It's been damn near 10 years since he said those words, yet to this day we have never let him live it down. Every single time a new Pokemon game releases with undoubtedly some new cryptic task for the player, you can bet the entire fan base will be right there with, oh, but the Azure Flute was too complicated. But it gets me thinking, how complicated does the series get? This question tends to get away from me a little, and while the Azure Flute intro here is meant as a setup, this video really isn't an indictment of crazy things the players have been expected to figure out over the years. Just a dive into some strangely complex things that have been committed to the series. Think of it as, I had a train of thought, and here are a few of the places I wound up. Before we start, some ground rules, so to speak, to set expectations a little more. We're not talking about the Regis from Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. We've all heard it 100 times. Oh my god, did you know the Braille guide was in the instruction book? We're good. No evolution methods. I'm sorry, Inkay, Yamask, the other one, Stantler, Basculin, the other one, Milcery, among countless others. And no general Pokemon data. Things like IVs, EVs, stat experience, personality value. Admittedly, I find Pokemon data structure to be fascinating, but it's all very justifiably complex, and really belongs in its own breakdown. Alright, so, no Regis, no evolution, and no Pokemon data. Got it? Perfect. Our first topic is the Regis. One of the most absolutely enduring comparisons to the Azure Flute. This will forever be the go-to for complicated BS in Pokemon games, but they're so well known that there's just no reason to talk about their original incarnations. That's why I specifically said no Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald Golems. Now, yes, we can talk about Pokemon Platinum, and how it literally has all 4 of the Golems in the game, but in order to get the original 3, you need to have Regigigas, and in order to get Regigigas, you need to have the original 3.
It says, in case of emergency, break glass with Reg. Hold on. This one says, use rock to break glass to get wrench to break glass to get rock. Ooh, I love logic puzzles. Let's see.
I can tell you what they were doing there. But what I really wanted to talk about was what they did in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when it was time to bring back the OG Reggie side quest. Now, some of you will already know where I'm going with this, because you were there, you remember what it was like, but it's been a long time. I'm talking like Boras itself is coming up on its 10-year anniversary. There are a lot of people out there who have no idea what Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire did. Now, here's the thing. Outside of some minor movement differences, because just the grid system works a little bit differently, but is largely still there and basically functions the same way, the original side quest is completely identical to its form in Ruby and Sapphire. Same requirements, same puzzles, same locations. It's jarring, honestly. But then we get to the little bonus thing they added. They decided to include Regigigas this time around, however. And they decided, we gotta include the new Reggie in the classic, super complicated, crazy puzzle that everyone's been talking about, basically since the day Ruby and Sapphire came out. Now, I was one of those people who got Regigigas back in the day, but even I forgot how absolutely silly these requirements were. Alright, let's go through it. First off, the moment you catch the last of the Reggie trio, the game makes a note of when you did that, because you don't even get to start on Regigigas until at least one day has passed. Then, once that day has passed, you talk to a girl in Pacific Log. At least I'm pretty sure you have to talk to her. The specifics are vague. I don't even know if to this day there is a definitive, yes, this is exactly what you have to do guide out there. Like I said, it's nearly 10 years, okay? There are so many I can't get Regigigas to show up posts out there that we should probably just assume every step is mandatory. For the record, I think the first step of you have to wait 24 hours is a big enough wall that likely solves half the posts out there, but we'll continue to err on the side of caution. The girl here tells you about how a big Pokemon visits the region to see an icy Pokemon, and she'll say, you need something cold. Ice cream, maybe? As an added bonus, what I assume is meant to be the next step, even though this actually isn't mandatory, is that you're supposed to track down a girl in Mauville City apartments who sits around all day going, I see ice cream, because if you bring her a Regice, she will sell you a Castelia cone for 200 Pokédollars. You can get Castelia cones elsewhere, and you don't even need a Castelia cone because other items work, like the Never Melt Ice and the Icy Rock. It just feels like that was their goal, like that's where they were going with this. If nothing else, this is a renewable source of icy items that you need for this quest. Once you've waited a day, you then need to intuit that Regice is supposed to have the cold thing, not you. Even if you know, okay, I guess I gotta find some ice cream and you have it in your inventory, that's not enough. Secondly, you have to do this during the day. Regigigas does not show up at night, so I don't know, get screwed, nighttime players. And lastly, I didn't really know where to throw this in, because as far as I know, the game does not mention it. Regice needs to have a nickname. Now, if you've done all that, you can go to the island cave where you first got Regice, and Regigigas will come crashing in once you walk onto a specific tile in the last room. I don't know. It can't just be me, but this is dumb, right? Like, the original Regis are absolutely absurdly complicated, and if I were to just read the instructions out loud to you now with zero context, it would all sound very silly. But truth be told, the pieces are there. Walk 2 steps right, 2 steps down, and then use strength. Sounds crazy, but the game literally tells you to do that. It's written right there, with the only barrier being a cipher that you are given both in-game and in the instruction book. This whole nickname Regigigas and give it an ice cream cone, and you have to go during the day, but only if you waited 24 hours thing. I don't know, that's just not in the spirit of the original Regis. This feels like a parody of that, you know what I mean? This is not, oh, it's complicated as hell, but the pieces are here. The pieces just aren't there! I don't know, guys, this one just doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. Let's talk about something way more fun. Complex mechanics. I'm talking about the bug catching contest in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. This contest is completely absurd, and definitely still leans a little into the how is anyone supposed to figure this out territory. I imagine most of us just show up to get Scyther and Pinsir, with the actual contest aspect being largely irrelevant. But what if you wanted to win? What if you showed up one day and realized, oh right, the reward is a Sunstone, and these are the only Sunstones in the game. Alright, let's play to win. So, ostensibly, the way it works is, you show up on one of the days that the contest is running, and you get 20 minutes to catch the strongest bug Pokemon. So, going purely off of intuition, you're likely to single out Butterfree, Beedrill, Scyther, and Pinsir as likely winner candidates. So, likely you'll just try to grab the best you can. You can only bring one Pokemon, so either you bring something around the level of the bugs here so you can weaken them, or you'll have some special False Swipe or Status User on board. So you go in, you run into a level 15 Beedrill, maybe knock it down a bit into yellow health, throw a Park Ball, and you're good. You run around a little more, you've got 20 minutes, you encounter 12 Caterpie and a Butterfree that's lower level than your Beedrill. You say, okay, just spare me, I'm probably good, I doubt it's that hard, and you go to get judged. They call out the winners, and you get called for 3rd place with a score of 339. At 2nd place is Picnicker Cindy with a Butterfree at 341, and 1st place is Cool Trainer Nick with a Scyther at 357. What the hell do any of these numbers mean? As far as I'm concerned, they might as well have said, I give you a 7 and kicked you out of the building. It doesn't mean anything. It certainly doesn't mean anything that the game tells you about. Chances are, even when you did catch a Scyther or Pinsir, your score amounted to 2nd place at best. I know prior to making this video, I'd heard you're not supposed to damage the Pokemon, catching them with full health is really important. And when I talked to one of my friends about it, he also said, yeah, it's better if they have full health, right? Let's actually break down the scoring here. Damn near nothing matters except for the stats of the Pokemon, in shockingly granular ways. Let's use that theoretical Beedrill from earlier. First is the Pokemon's max HP, multiplied by 4. Then, you take all of their other stats and add them up. Then, you take their DVs. The site here lists them as IVs, but we'll ignore the semantics. What the game does here is cut them all in half and round them down. Then you get points for every odd number that results from this. But it's not based on how many odd numbers, no, it's based on which ones are odd. Attack is worth 8 points, defense is worth 16, special is worth 4, and speed is worth 1. Lastly, take the Pokemon's current HP, that's the thing we've been talking about, divide it by 8 and round down. Then as an added bonus, you can add 1 more point if they're holding an item. Bear in mind that when you catch a Pokemon in the contest, they don't go into your party. They go into that little side menu that lets you know what you have, so you can't cheese this by grabbing an item before you head in for scoring. The only Pokemon in this contest that can come holding an item are Butterfree, Beedrill, and Paris. This Beedrill here comes out to 339, but that really doesn't mean anything without context. We need relativity, so let's talk about the best score you can get. The Pokemon with the highest potential for a score in the entire contest is a level 14 Scyther. If you catch a Scyther at level 14, with max stats in everything, and had at least 40 HP when you caught it, that will come out to a score of 386. To To take a look at the other side, let's pour one out for Weedle, who comes in with the absolute lowest potential score, caught at level 7 with 0 DVs in every stat, caught with too little HP to even get a single extra point. That poor fella clocks in at just 132 points. So in a way, the game is honest when it says that it wants the strongest bug, but they mean they want the exact stats to be as high as possible. And remember that I said these Pokemon don't go into your party. You don't even get the option to check said stats. If you want to win, and you're looking for just what you as the player should do, just run around until you find a level 14 Scyther and throw the Park Ball at full health. As an added bonus, a Park Ball at max health has an 8.984% chance of catching. Shoutouts to Cave of Dragonflies for that one. With odds that low, there's a 15.2% chance that you will throw all 20 of your Park Balls and not catch it. Given how agonizing it is to get to this point in the first place, a 15% chance to just straight up fail through no fault of your own is a little higher than I'd like. Have you ever missed a Fire Blast? Yeah. Fortunately, status is not a factor, so if you can put Scyther to sleep and keep it asleep, you've instead got about a 13% chance of catching Scyther with each ball. Paralysis does not work in this generation, so it's gotta be sleep. Unless you can freeze the Scyther without dealing more than 7 damage. What's really evil here is the competition. Just actually getting strong bug Pokemon is not that bad, it's how strong they want you to be. Every trainer here has 3 random Pokemon that they get, and let's talk about the absolute scourge of the bug catching contest, Cool Trainer Nick. If Cool Trainer Nick shows up, you're caught between his 3 potential catches. A Butterfree with 349 points, a Scyther with 357, and a Pinsir with 368 points. If he shows up that day and gets that Pinsir, that means that even if you know you have to catch a level 14 Scyther, that's less than 20 points of wiggle room. That whole your defense DV has to be double an odd number check is worth 16 points alone, and there are only 8 possible DVs that even get you those points in the first place. If your Scyther happened to have a 13 in defense, then you're just screwed. Unless you happen to get the God Scyther, then there's a 1 in 3 chance that the contest was just impossible that day. There's nothing you could do. Even worse is that on top of this, you have Camper Barry, who could also show up. He's got a 366 point Pinsir, so you've got 2 chances to just be completely screwed. My question is, does the game hint at any of this? If you're looking at my B-roll, I've talked to every single NPC during this, and outside of the most plain flavor text that one could only extract the absolute vaguest of hints from, the only thing I could find resembling an actual tip was this guy telling you to weaken the Pokemon first, which lowers your score. All this so you can get Sunflora or Blossom. As a quick aside, I wanted to mention HeartGold and SoulSilver's iteration of the contest. The changes are fairly minimal, surprisingly. It's calculated completely differently, but winds up accomplishing the exact same thing. Everything is now percentage based. You need a high level, and it's based on what the Pokemon's highest level could be. They take all your IVs at once now, and get a percentage out of the maximum, and then they take your current HP based on a percentage of the max. The weird thing now is that the game just straight up assigns rarity values to each species, giving you either a 60, 80, or 100 point bonus, depending on who you caught. The only Pokemon worth 100 points are Scyther and Pinsir. So what this comes out to is a game where the maximum score is a level 14 Scyther with max stats and full HP. Some differences here is that after you beat the game, all of the levels double. Pinsir now can obtain the same score, and since everything is percentages, the max score is an even 400. But the method is identical. Catch a max level Scyther or Pinsir, and hope the RNG lets you win. There is one important aspect here, though, that I haven't mentioned yet, and it's the one thing that HeartGold and SoulSilver didn't preserve. It's the whole divide all the DVs and get odd numbers thing. There are only 2 explanations I can think of for why it was done this way. One, so you just had about a 50% chance to get some extra points, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Or, so that you get the bonus points both for a Pokemon with max DVs and for a shiny Pokemon. Remember that in Gen 2, shiny Pokemon are calculated based on their DVs. So, the idea that catching a shiny gives you a score bonus is honestly a really cool thing to include as far as I'm concerned, and I'm willing to believe it's intentional given that this is the generation that introduced shinies in the first place. No such bonus exists in Gen 4, however, so if you find a shiny, you might be throwing away that day's win just to get it. Somehow I think you'd be able to live with that, though. Last one on the docket today, and it's something that definitely doesn't cover how were kids meant to figure this out, and just trends fully towards why the hell is this so complicated just in and of itself? Mirage Island. I genuinely want to know if anyone watching this has ever encountered Mirage Island fully organically. You need to not only know it exists, but you have to be committed to checking every single day, and you might just have awful odds in the first place. If you don't know, it's as simple as this. There's an island on Hoenn Route 130 called Mirage Island that will randomly spawn on a given day. On it, you can find Wild Wynaut and the game's one and only Lychee Berry, one of the best pinch berries in the game, and also great at another purpose. The island's got special stuff, but they pale in comparison to just the sheer rarity of seeing the island at all. How does it spawn? To the player, it's only a maybe it showed up today. There is nothing in the game that hints as to its methods, nor is there anything that even mentions its existence outside of a man in Pacifid log as far as I'm concerned, whose sole goal is to tell you if maybe it showed up today. Here's how it works. What the game actually does is, the moment you hit continue, it checks what day it is. Remember that Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald have a real-time clock built into them. Then, least surprising of all, it generates a random number. It's 2 bytes, which is 4 hex digits, or more simply, it's a number between 0 and 65,535. Then, to determine if Mirage Island appears, it checks this random number against the personality values of the Pokémon in your party. Personality values are 4 bytes long, so it just takes the first 2, yes, this is the first byte and this is the second, and sees if they're the same number. If so, Mirage Island is there. You probably have a bunch of assumptions in your head right now, but I promise this is as strange and janky as you'd assume. Any given Pokemon has a 1 out of 65,536 chance of matching Mirage Island's value for that day. Theoretically, more on that in a bit. Thus, if you have a full party of Pokemon and, God forbid, none of them have the same 2 bytes at the front of their personality value, that comes out to a 1 out of 10,923 chance of Mirage Island showing up the moment you check. So, your first thought. Can you just go and swap out your party to check again? Well, probably not. I imagine it just checks once a day and you... No. You can swap around your party as many times as you like. If anything, it feels like they want you to do this, because they included a guy who will literally check if Mirage Island showed up when you did that, instead of you having to surf out there every time. This makes Mirage Island's odds way better, right? All you have to do is know to swap out your party and talk to the man in the corner of the town that doesn't let you run. Over and over. If your save file happens to have 100 Pokemon in it, and somehow none of them have the same 2 bytes at the front of their personality value, then your odds jump up to the impressive 1 out of 656. Now that sounds pretty good, honestly. If your shiny odds were 1 out of 656, you'd be popping them out. But shiny odds are rolled for every single Pokemon you encounter. This 1 out of 656 chance is rolled per day. And when I say rolled, I mean you personally are going to go and walk back and forth 17 times, checking every single Pokemon in your save file, and if you don't get it, wait 24 hours and do it again. If you do that every day for a week, you've got an astounding 1% chance. If you committed to doing that every day for a year, you'd hit a whopping 42.7% chance. Imagine, not even a 50% chance for all your dedication. Not even a coin flip. But, are you ready for the worst part? Remember that little theoretically asterisk? Well, The game generates a number between 0 and 65,535, but it does so daily, based on the RTC, the real-time clock. But the RTC doesn't have 65,536 days. They set the clock's range from the year 2000 to the year 2099. This isn't a strange range. The GameCube sets its clock to the exact same range. To my knowledge, the PlayStation 2 does it as well. But the years 2000 to 2099 only have 36,525 days between them. What's worse is that the random number generator produces duplicate values in this range too, which lowers the number of possible Mirage Island values to just 27,925. Now then, this would be great if there was simply a yes-no factor on each given number. But remember that these numbers are checked against your Pokemon's personality values. Personality values that very much exist in the full range from 0 to 65,535. If you do the math on this, only around 42.6% of the possible values overlap with Mirage Island's values at all. That means that any given Pokemon you catch has over a 50% chance of possessing a personality value that will never correspond with Mirage Island. All of this is to say nothing of the glitches and limitations present within the RTC. Don't forget that the RTC runs off of a battery in your cartridge, a battery that can run dry, and is susceptible to things such as the berry glitch. If your RTC stops updating, then your Mirage Island value will be frozen in place, but that does mean that you've got an eternity to find a Pokemon that will trigger the island. But what, all of this is so that you can save yourself from having to breed a Wobbuffet? Chances are the real thing you want here is the Lychee Berry, so you can make a great competitive moveset for one of the battle facilities. Or maybe you have another use for that berry in mind. A complicated use. One that delves into something so complex, it overcame the entire scope of this video on its own. One that sent me down a rabbit hole so far, I had to save it for an entirely new project. If you're curious, then stick around, because next time we're going to take a look at the Pokéblock. I'll see you then.